Huh?
Feel the music.
Well, boom, hitting the firmament, hitting it,
Bouncing off the firmament.
bouncing off of it, hitting it. He didn't really go that high as we talked about before. I mean, I, I, I almost want to say like you can get a model rocket that, um,
With a GoPro?
I mean, yeah, I hate to say it, but yeah.
You know, that's an idea. Why don't you
Why
call
don't I
Mad
just,
Mike Hughes up and say, look, it's very difficult to send yourself up that high, but instead, why don't we take you on a little excursion up to Mount Whitney, not far from you, with a rocket and a GoPro. And I bet for under $1,000, he could launch a GoPro from the top of Mount Whitney another couple thousand feet.
oh, absolutely.
We could get a good clear shot of the Earth, and unfortunately, he's probably going to conclude that it's flat because even at that height, it's my understanding that it looks pretty much like a disc.
Right. Yeah, I think he would, which is kind of weird. I mean, just like thinking thinking it through for a minute. I mean, so he launches himself up. Oh, I don't know what 1900 feet. Um, and and then, well, let me ask. I mean, was that 1900 feet on top of like? Because you mentioned he was in this area that was high elevation. So
Hmm.
was his total elevation 1900 feet, or did he just climb an additional 1900?
I think he was not in a high elevation location. But anyhow, we're off task. This is the old flat earther discussion, which I don't know if you want to talk about. I more
No,
importantly,
no, 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 no,
I
not really.
want Dana to tell us what's on her mind.
Not really. I
Oh,
don't. I just bring it up just for sentimental value, yeah.
yes. No, there's a beautiful thing about a man who builds a steam-powered rocket and shoots it up into the sky to check and see if the world is flat. It only goes
Uh,
less high than a mountain in the nearby area within sight of it. The rocket could just have hiked to the top of one of those hills right around the video I saw of it, and he would have gone the same height. Oh, there's a
pretty
beautiful thing there.
classic.
There's something beautiful there.
Yeah, it's pretty classic.
It's sort of like a mix of human ingenuity and human stupidity, all together. I don't know if I'll call it stupid though. I don't like calling people stupid. I don't know what it is.
No.
I don't know what it is. Anyhow, what's on Dana's mind?
Um, mm, I'm just really tired.
Yeah, yeah. You know what you had playing today that I thought was so interesting? You had a guy talking about what's important in life, and then he was listing off those important things, and then sort of saying that if you just did those things, that would be a lot.
Yes. Like he also said he didn't have a TV because he just doesn't have any time for that. Like
Well,
he has
well done.
zero time to spend watching TV, so they don't have a TV. Yeah, I think I think that's motivating, and he's all for doing the most important things as a priority, and then if the other things don't happen, they don't happen.
And those most important things, what were they? Online, poker, horse racing, and video games?
No, and not making a machine, I think, to see if the earth was flat. I don't think that'd be on the list.
Ooh.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Like, why? Isn't
That
that a
that
good?
hurt.
Isn't it a good question though? I mean, at the at the end of the day, like, isn't it like? I mean, if you discovered, not that it would necessarily change a lot, but if you discovered that the Earth was flat at this point, I mean, wouldn't that be like kind of one of those things where you go, "Holy cow!" Uh,
We do so much based on the round Earth. Like, it might as well just stay round in our minds because it's been such a useful predictor, right? Like planes fly to places with enough fuel.
You believe all that conspiracy stuff?
I didn't get into it. Just what would the planes be doing? Just like
Flying and
circles?
from one place
deep,
to another?
deep stating, deep state kind of stuff.
But wouldn't it be way um distorted?
Hey, when
Wouldn't
you
everything be
fly,
distorted?
do you know that when you fly from here to like Russia, it's quicker to go over the North Pole? See? That only makes sense if the Earth is flat.
But how do they fool everybody?
It wouldn't make sense to go around. It makes sense to go straight there. So of course they go straight there. See?
It's actually pretty easy to fool everybody, I think.
Because you
With
can't
like
really.
directions and
Well, just
Well,
look around,
coordinates,
Dana. Have you ever seen the
GPS?
Earth as a
It
sphere?
doesn't. How does GPS work?
That's all fake.
But it works really nicely. So who's in on it to make GPS work?
They just use those cell towers for that now.
But who's they? Why are they
No,
trying to
no,
make
no.
us
I'm
think the
saying
Earth
that they
is
don't need
round?
satellites. They just use cell towers.
But why? This is a very big conspiracy theory.
You mean why are they shooting rockets up into the air and acting like they're putting satellites out there?
Yes, why are they doing this to us?
well, I mean,
Why are they fooling us so bad?
Hey, don't you think it'd be a nice way to make money if you could convince people that the Earth was round and that you needed to send satellites up into space when in truth you don't really need to do any of that? You just have towers all around? Then you
Anyway,
could tell people, look, I need $1 billion to shoot my rocket up into space. Mike Hughes does it for like $10,000.
yeah. So Jeff, you're gonna have to convince me that this right now is a good use of time when I'm really tired. So
That's true.
well, no,
it behooves you by the content of this show to show me why I'm here and not asleep.
I think I think it actually is. I mean, well, I'm gonna say you probably at this point you're not at this moment interested in the discussion, but um, you take a little bit of a deep dive into it. It's actually pretty interesting.
You dive, Ron. Dive in.
Yeah, you gotta take a deep dive into it. And if you do, it's actually pretty interesting.
I think that
Just the what I mean, just bringing up some stuff, but I mean, think about it for a moment. Mike Hughes, I mean, he's going to a lot of effort to like prove his thing. I mean, why is he doing that?
Because
What
he's
the
a
heck's
man.
yeah.
like there's that guy who made the world's biggest shopping cart.
Mm-hmm. And a man who made the fastest
What?
motorized baby stroller. Like it has a motor on it. It goes really fast. Or 35 miles an hour or something like that. I don't
Goodness.
know.
Does it have a roll
Something,
cage?
something.
Does it have a roll cage?
Well, the better
So
question is how many walks did he miss with his child in a regular
making this stroller. The baby
stroller?
grew up while he was making this motorized stroller for the baby.
Uh, So
Well,
that's because Mike Hughes, is that the guy? He did it. He's doing it because he's a man. And
probably.
sometimes men build big, amazing bridges, And sometimes they build motorized baby strollers.
Or rockets that steam powered rockets that shoot up in.
Launch from converted motorhomes.
Well, like, didn't you just say like he could have just driven up to this mountain that
The
was like
mountains that are
higher?
around him. Yeah, he only went like less than 2,000 feet. So like you can go
Well,
to the local mountains and you're way past that already.
yeah, I
What's
was
he
thinking
doing?
like you could just go on like a hike. You could take a hike. Like you could just I do it on Saturdays, Sunday. You know what I mean? Like my days off.
But maybe he had
I
some
have
special measuring equipment that was taking readings as he's going up that couldn't have been done on the hike. Oh man.
it could other than
Why don't you get
here's.
Mike Hughes on this show?
Well, no, that's
Oh,
the thing. That's what I'd like
Let's
to do,
just
actually. That's what I'd like
really,
to do
can
because
you get, does he have contact info?
I'm
Mike, are you
I'm
listening?
I'm just wondering, with that said, I mean, because I would like to ask him these questions. I mean, like, hey, buddy, just out of curiosity, I know you launched up in your rocket, but did you think about maybe just going on a quick hike for half a day?
ah, man.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I
Can't
don't
you
know.
even
I'd
just
like.
like go up, go like take an elevator up a really high
I don't
building?
know. No, no,
What's he
building.
doing?
I think let's see. World's
Oh,
world's
Dubai. Maybe.
tallest building.
Wouldn't it only be like
Wait,
20
hold
stories?
on,
After
hold
20
on.
stories, you can see really.
Okay. World's tallest building is 2,717 feet. So yeah, he could go there too.
Is that in Dubai?
Let's take the
That's
elevator.
the Burj Khalifa. I can't believe it's that tall. How did they do that? Dubai.
Sounds nasty.
It's so
Burj
dangerous to
Khalifa?
shoot yourself up in a rocket.
Sounds sounds dirty.
Burj Khalifa sounds dirty.
Yeah, it sounds like. Oh.
2,717 feet. Yeah, he could have just gone up to the top of that building, but that would be expensive. That's true. It would have been much safer. He could have even been in a plane on the way there.
Taking measurements.
Well, I've heard
Yeah.
that there's a theory that the planes um are actually like Star Tours. You go down the little line and you get inside and then it's all fake.
What are we looking at when we see the planes? Those are
Huh?
decoys?
No, 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 no. Those people are really flying, but they need to put they
Oh, it's like
so, so,
screens on
so
the
so that
windows.
otherwise they'd see that the Earth was
Mm,
flat.
wow.
I don't know if I'm making that up though. Does that sound accurate to something you've heard before, Ron?
What do you mean? Like, can you run through that again? Sorry, I was multitasking.
I thought that don't they claim that airplanes that they actually have screens going in there or something?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that actually, I think that actually, yeah, that is actually and a serious legitimate argument, by the way. It's not like that's not um considered a possibility. Yeah, so you're like on a 747, and what you're actually experiencing and feeling is a simulation. It's more, you know, I don't know how they do it. They do it so effectively,
Yeah,
but
so I think it's someone's doing these articles they're writing them as a joke, and then other
Okay,
people
hold
believe
on.
them and share them, but it's a joke. Like that's
Newsflash.
someone who's enjoying making mischief among people.
Okay, hold on a second here. Newsflash. Newsflash. I am once again saying false things about the flat earthers. So here's their answer from the Flat Earth Society. It
Yeah,
says
well, hold on a second before you go into that. As much as we're laughing about this, it's not like there's not a serious they don't make serious arguments for this stuff. They're pretty serious about it. I mean, we're laughing about it, but they're not really laughing about it.
well, at this point, I was being, I was I had heard that, I think. I don't think I just made that up, but I had heard that. And maybe I was just about to continue spreading lies. But from the Flat Earth Society, it says, as a passenger on an aircraft, how is it I can see the curvature of the Earth? And it says, quite simply, you cannot. It is widely stated you would need to be at a height of at least 40,000 feet to get even a hint of curvature if Earth were round. Commercial aircraft are not allowed to fly this high. They are only allowed to fly just under this altitude. 36,000 feet might be typical. In addition, the windows on commercial aircraft are small and heavily curved. Even if they flew high enough for a person to see curvature, it would still not be visible to passengers. So that might be all true. So that's not. I had heard what Ron had said, but that's not it. Now, Mike Hughes, here's his website. It says Mad Mike Hughes exploring again. Waldo Stakes Chief Crow Flat Earth Radio. Chris Punch is more to be announced. I don't know what that is, but Flat Earth Exit the Matrix Expo 2019. Dana, do you want to exit the Matrix or not?
No,
I wonder how
I'm
much these tickets
content.
are, Ron. You want to go on a road trip?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
May 25th and 26th. Dana, is that around that other?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, maybe I could make a double trip.
Which is
No, no, actually, it's I think it's early May is
Oh,
the
okay.
Bible conference. So, what are you gonna do, Jeff, to prevent between now and if God is kind to you and lets you live until 50? So, if you have this next chunk of time, how are you going to prevent yourself from doing something that will later feel just as much of a waste of time as sending a rocket up 2,000 feet?
That's a good question.
Like, because you could get sidetracked and
It's a good
fritter
question.
your time away.
It was kind of
How are you
unexpected
gonna?
to have a real question out of just like that. Did you hear that, Ron?
yes, I did actually.
With to dodge your question, it says the vent's only $20.
Mhm. Don't go to the flat Earth conference, please.
I don't know.
Um,
I don't know. I think it could be pretty fun and
How?
memorable.
well, not only pretty fun, but I mean, educate. Is there really? I mean, is there really anything um like? I mean, think about it for a minute. If somebody's exploring these topics and simply asking questions and trying to get to the bottom of stuff, I'm assuming that's a valid and reasonable pursuit, right, of truth and your
Well,
time
that would assume that the person
is doing it on valid reasons, right?
in a way that's, let's say, reasonable. I do have a current sort of realization being a math teacher, and that is that perfectly normal people doing perfectly normal math problems get perfectly wrong answers, and that's accepted in a math class. In other words, it's perfectly normal to make mistakes in reasoning and thinking. And that's in the context of a class where you're supposed to be trying to figure something out using an agreed upon set of rules. And people struggle with that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
when it comes to deciding whether the earth is flat or something else, um, what is the agreed upon set of rules for taking on this endeavor? And even if there is an agreed upon set of rules, even though there's not, but let's assume there was for a second, that doesn't necessarily mean we even make the right solution in the end. As a teacher, I observe quite often uh, people struggling with things that I dare say are simpler.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no,
so
no, it's a good point. It's a very good point. But that's, I mean, that's, I mean, even with agreed upon rules and the fact that you can struggle agreeing upon those, which rules are we going to agree upon, all the little nuances that go along with that. But still, at the end of the day, I mean, it's just a discussion, and um, people explore different things. I mean, I don't necessarily see. I mean, yeah, I could personally say, well, it's a waste of my time personally, not something I want to do. And I'm not referring to the flat earth stuff, but just anything in general. There's a lot of things. I don't, nobody has time for everything. So you kind of pick and choose the things that interest you and the things that don't interest you. And, for a lot of people, I've watched some pretty elaborate research videos on the topic, and I'd say people put in an enormous amount of time in it. Obviously, conferences are taking place, right? So people are pretty engaged. Might
here,
not be
I have an
not
idea.
be your thing personally, but certainly is for a lot of other people.
I have an idea. On the Flat Earth Society website, they have a frequently asked questions section. How about each show, in honor of Mad Mike Hughes, we read
Yeah,
one of their answers to a frequently asked question.
there you go. That would be great. Actually, that's a great idea
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
a starting point. Just like, hey, we're gonna take one of
Yeah.
these frequently asked questions, and
Well,
we're just
well,
just one. There you
yeah.
go. I like that.
But not necessarily to get too deep into it, just to,
No, just to hear what their
to
response
just
is.
to hear what they might say. So here's the first one. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's week number one, our
Week
first
one. People
frequently
have been
asked.
into space. How have they not discovered the Earth is flat? Is that a good one? Good opener?
Yeah, is
That's a
that
good
the
question, right? I
answer?
mean, no. The question. That's the question. The frequently asked questions for the Flat Earth Society is people have been into space, so how come
Yes.
they haven't figured it out?
Oh, yes,
All right.
yes, yes.
The most commonly accepted explanation of this is that the space agencies of the world are involved in a conspiracy, faking space travel and exploration. This likely began during the Cold War's space race, in which the USSR and USA were obsessed with beating each other into space to the point that each faked their accomplishments in an attempt to keep space with the other's supposed achievements. Since the end of the Cold War, however, the conspiracy is most likely motivated by greed rather than political gain. And using only some of their funding to continue to fake space travel saves a lot of money to embezzle for themselves. In light of the above, please note that we are not suggesting that space agencies are aware that the Earth is flat and actively covering the fact up. They depict the Earth as being round simply because that is what they expect it to be. How about that?
I like that. That is see?
That's
Yes.
good.
Wait,
That's
Now,
good.
if you now here's what we want to do. That's the answer. We're just gonna leave it there and
Okay.
talk
Wait, we
about
don't get
some
to
other stuff.
we don't want to have any thoughts on that. Dana sounded
Well,
like she wanted to say something.
no, maybe
yeah,
that can just be a regular segment on
Oh,
this
okay.
great show. And we'll just go get through all the FAQs to make this multi-interest show. Some people will tune in for the FAQs about the flat Earth.
I Do you doubt that? Do you really doubt that?
Again, I think he has to come on this show and speak for himself. What's really going on? Is this just a prank?
Uh,
I think I'm gonna try to
Is
get him
this?
on. Actually, I think I'm gonna actually try to get him on. I think I
Mm-hmm.
want to have a conversation with him.
hey,
Wouldn't that
I'm
be?
on his website right now.
Would
Let's
that
see.
be
I'm
fun?
scrolling down. Scrolling down. Interview requests. Actually has an interview request. Should I
Oh
fill it
my
in right
gosh!
now?
Yes.
All right. DJ. I'll fill it in while you guys talk about something else here.
Well, Rom,
See.
I don't know. How would you? Here's
I liked your
something.
question before, Dana. I
Oh,
liked it.
about wasting time.
We didn't get to it, but
How are you gonna not waste your time? Well, this might. I mean, unless you want to answer that question, I have a different question.
Yeah. What's up? What do you got?
So, um, so I think like I've shared how I've been trying to be more focused on the kingdom of God, and I've pulled away from media. I think the last week or two, though, I've really gotten more distracted or interested in just the news and all that. But for the most part, I think I've been trying to focus. And um, part of what happens, I mean, mostly I'm just busy with my own children and all the things I have to do around the house, wearing myself out, like I shared with you before the show. Today I was gardening, I was bossing people around, I was changing diapers, making food. I got more out.
Heavy hitter on the home scene.
Yeah, no bonbons and laying on the couch for me today. That did not happen. So, but I have found that I've been more prayerful, and but also like people are in my life and people come by, and there does seem to be some real, I often an emphasis on spiritual things, I guess. That's been kind of nice. So, but one situation in particular has really got me thinking, because right now I've been a professing Christian for 20 years. So I keep trying to think back to that early start, um, and what my attitude was, trying to see, okay, um, just for perspective, I guess, because with one person I'm dealing with, I'm constantly kind of, um, I don't make much of trying to exactly judge where somebody's at, right? Because I always admit I might not be getting the whole picture. Um, it's between them and God, but I do pray for people, or um, give my perspective. So for this person, my perspective currently is, oh, I don't think they're really fully surrendered, you know? So
Yeah.
they made the profession and doing lots of church stuff. But that's just my take. Well, um, and I was thinking, like, so I don't know, I guess, or maybe I don't know what I'm bringing it up for. Maybe just to get your opinion, or maybe you experienced what I experienced early on, which I feel and think it's different from what I'm seeing in them. So here's an example. Like, and I brought this up. I was talking, and sharing, but I said something like, if somebody called me a bad name, like, Dana, you're a thief, or you're a whore,
Mm-hmm.
Dana. Like, I mean, that doesn't typically happen, right? But I was just sharing. I would really just probably say, yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, not to say that's something I'm practicing today, but yeah, like, and
Like,
I think I felt like early on becoming a Christian isn't that a main part? Like, you're saying, gosh, I'm an awful person. Like, I'm an awful person. And I don't get to say anymore, I'm a good person. How dare you call me this? Like, I kind of feel like, wasn't that, it seemed like a very natural thing that's what you were supposed to um, kind of embrace, right?
Like you come
Isn't
you
that the
come to
beginning of Christianity?
like you come to this realization, like you're a sinner, you're an awful person, you're horrible, and then you're like, I'm not anymore, but you are. That kind of thing. Like
Wait, what do you mean? I don't understand. What I
right? I mean, is you're I think I'm going along your same line. So you have this realization that you're an awful person, right? Um
yes.
and then you're like, okay, I realize it. And then you start telling other people like, well, you're an awful person too.
Well, I mean, maybe not. Okay, maybe
Not
not.
not
Maybe
not in those terms.
not getting into what I'm saying to other people, but just I feel like I'm trying to remember because what's happening with this person is they're getting very offended if somebody criticizes them, or maybe in a very harsh way, right? And some of the things that they're saying, I just was thinking, wow, like I don't say those things, like I don't say I'm a good person to anybody, like demand you recognize I'm a good person, right? um I just was thinking,
Well,
oh,
yeah.
like I never say that, like, and then I was even trying to share, like, here's why I'm not really on the same page with you, because I said if someone called me some names that are actually true names, like, because for the purpose of pointing out my sin or something, or trying to get me to admit I did these sins, I don't. I really don't feel like I take offense. It probably would bother. It bothers me, and I have spoken up when I feel like it's something that I really didn't do. Like I really didn't um, you know, I really
Eat all
didn't
the
vote for
cookies in the
Trump.
cookie jar.
No, yeah, but no, I'm saying like things that are true though. I guess I just I can't, I keep thinking, wasn't what I went through, isn't that like a requirement almost, where you just really, like, you get really settled with a very low view of yourself, like, to where it doesn't make sense to insist that other people recognize you as good, because part of the basic theology is thinking I deserve to be sent to hell. Like, right? Did you go through that early on?
Well, yeah, there's none righteous, no, not one. I mean, that's a pretty commonly quoted scripture in the church, at least in my experience, and not just the church I personally attended or the few that I attended, but listening to, gosh, I can't even tell you. Listening to sermons and talking to people from different backgrounds, reading things. You know, none are righteous, no, not one. That on the back of people explaining it as we all sin, we all fall short, we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. That's kind of always been the message I've heard.
Yeah.
I think there's
So
a song. It goes something like "Amazing Grace." How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's been as far as I know, that's been kind of the message, right? So
yes.
what's made you think? Is it because of this interaction that you've had recently that you've been thinking about this, and specifically, is it troubling you that they're resistant to? Sounds like they're a bit resistant to what your message is. Sounds like they're not embracing it. Is that troubling, or is it? are you confused by them saying to you, you're not perfect? I don't know why you're not calling me not perfect, and we're all sinners, and they throw that back in your face kind
No,
of thing?
no, no. It's them saying that they're a good person. That's what surprises me, kind of.
Oh, them saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, at the end of it, I do this and I do this, and
Yeah, because I
I'm a
kind of
decent
thought,
person.
and then I was trying to remember. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not remembering things as cleanly as how they really happened. Because, like, when I first became a Christian, I knew I had to stop doing certain things. Like, I knew I had to stop doing those things, but I didn't feel bad about those things. I didn't feel like I was really going to miss doing those things. And with some of those things, I think it wasn't until years later that I actually cried because I felt so bad about participating in those activities. But I didn't have it took me a while to actually feel bad, so I think I made the right choice in that I stopped, right? But that was just out of like obedience. Hey, I know I need to repent from doing this stuff. And later I actually had feelings about it, like ashamed. Um, so then I was trying to just think through that. I'm like, well, maybe she hasn't really understood what this whole gospel is, right? I think sometimes people participate in churches for all sorts of reasons, because they like the social things. People are a lot nicer, I think, in churches, or you want to start a new chapter, right? Kind of like a new chapter. Um, and then I was trying to, but then, so I'm just thinking as I'm talking pretty freely with them. But then I was just thinking, well, maybe I'm kind of expecting them to make all these realizations a lot faster than I made these realizations, right? Like, but I can't really remember taking the line of, "Oh, I'm a good person," how
Yeah,
dare you?
no,
So that was
that's
so I was just
fair.
trying to think, like, isn't this a main idea though? Like, or perhaps I was part of a church, and maybe you were too, where they at least preach really hard on this at times, you're a sinner thing. Some churches really don't do that. So maybe that's it. Maybe just the message I heard was actually really different than what they're hearing in their church.
Well, I guess, I mean, not knowing exactly what her beef is, or what her defense for being, a good person or whatever. I guess I'd have to understand. I mean, maybe, at the end of the day, I mean, maybe she does do nice, good things. I mean, maybe there are actions that she takes that are nice actions. Maybe they are good. Maybe they are things that are fair, in that way. But I mean, I don't know. That's it's a discussion. It's not a, this is it and this is black and this is white at this point. I mean, I'm not saying it can't get there. I'm not saying that you can't have a firm, concrete conviction or, um, thing that you believe in. I'm just saying, I mean, at this point, have you, is she close to you? What has she said to you? I mean, specifically, I guess that's a good place to start. Like, what's happened recently? Do you know her? Does she know you? Does she look at you like your life? Is she around you a lot? Tell me more about like
Well, I
what.
don't want to get too much into where things she said or where she's at. I guess I was just maybe I was using this, or it's something that's been on my mind more like me thinking what my experience of first becoming a Christian and how that changed my view of myself. And then as I'm talking with her and also sharing where I'm coming from.
Sure.
I guess just processing whether what I experience is actually the more typical or maybe normative, what kind of should happen when you go through this whole conversion, right? Like having a really, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like I would say I began to have a worse view of myself becoming a Christian. Like I started to
Right.
view
So
my, like actually think, oh, I actually, if there was a God, I do, or if I remember, thinking if there was hell, oh, I guess I deserve to go there. So I'm getting like a worse view of myself. But then at the same time, it was like, I wasn't like depressed. I mean, as much as, that actually helped me overcome depression.
so is this
And
like
so
a
it
is
didn't
this
like
like
it, it's like a dichotomy. Like you get really open, I think for me at least, and maybe you have a different perspective. Because what I said too, I said, you know, I'm a bad person. Like you're in the home of a bad person. And I didn't mean like, oh, I'm doing these terrible things right now, but all the things I really openly practice, I'm like, I'm not gonna stomp my foot and say, no, I'm good, but I do think God's changed me and helped me. And I actually do want to do good, but it's different though. I don't think I would, I guess it's like, I feel like it's a more realistic picture of me. Like to be able to say, yes, you can call me, someone could call me all these names, these terrible names of things that are fitting, right? Because, like if you do something, like if you lie and you're a liar, even if you stopped lying for 15 years, like, well, you're still like a liar, right? Like you still were a liar. Um, you don't take, that doesn't get taken away. It's good to not practice lying though, currently. But, right, you could still say, well, yeah, that person's a liar. Or what do you call them? Former liar? Um, but like, I just felt like I guess I feel like no, I really don't. I feel like I don't have any pride in my virtue because I'm kind of looking at the sum total of my adult life. But then I do really embrace, righteously obeying Christ and all that. But anyway, but isn't that part of becoming a Christian? You start to really think, man, I'm a rotten person. I'm capable of rotten things. So you're like less offended when somebody brings up your real rotten stuff?
yeah, so I mean, I guess for instance, let's do a comparative kind of, situation here. So, you're go back to the time you're a new Christian and you're kind of discovering, this whole Christianity thing, and then you're like, um, I guess, I'm a sinner, blah blah blah, right? And you're like, wow,
Blah, blah, blah. So
well,
reverent. I'm just,
so you come to this realization that you're a sinner, and then you start realizing the implications of that, and um, you don't really mind having this view of like, hey, I'm not really this like great perfect person, and then um, it sounds like the opposite is true of this individual, where like they've come into this realization that like, hey, I'm not so bad, like I'm pretty good, right? Is that like kind of what
yeah,
we're
yeah. So maybe, yeah, so those are some of the things expressed or, anyway, but again, not trying to get too much into their situation,
sure, sure, yeah.
but I was just, yeah, I'm thinking, um, yeah, and again, I'm open. I'm like, well, maybe some of the things, maybe some of this took me longer to realize, but I think there was a certain deep humility that
Mm-hmm.
really started in me. That's different than low self-esteem. I'm not talking like, oh, I'm so stupid and what,
Yeah.
because, but just like I think it seems like that's kind of a key thing that maybe gets started early on, and that
Mm-hmm.
should continue to like, even while I'd say like today I'm doing many more good works, versus the past, right? But still just this humility, like, oh, like I'm capable of all sorts of terrible things. Like I think I shared on this amazing show, right? There was this girl who drove the wrong way on the freeway. I
Mm-hmm.
guess she had just had a baby too, like 3 weeks before. So she's out partying and she drives up the wrong, she's driving the wrong way on the freeway, like 100 miles an hour, and she smashes into this family's um, truck and kills a couple of those family members, and she kills her sister. And, she survives because she's totally drunk. And when I read, and this happened in Pomona, um, and Jeff and I had heard all the ambulances going over, or the police cars. It had been like really early in the morning. Um, and so when I read all the outrage comments, like, I mean, really, people online commenting on the news story, and I know some of these people because my neighborhood, I don't know, were active posters or something on online local news media. But anyway, yeah, lots of very negative comments about this girl, and I just thought like, oh, like that would have been me. Like, wow, like I really feel like
Right.
I
Yeah.
relate. Like I'm like, oh, I was just like that. Like not like I didn't do that, but I could have, you know, if I
Yeah,
kept
you're
going.
capable of making mistakes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, like that's a real reckless, crazy mistake. I don't know if that's like mistake, but just um. So I felt a lot of sympathy, I guess, for this person who I don't know, but I just thought, wow, like, man, you really messed up. And however, yeah, I guess I'm not feeling like I was so different. Where I thought with a lot of the comments, I'm like, oh, like these people seem to, what she did was terrible. What she did was absolutely terrible, reckless, horrible. She ruined people's lives. Um, but I also could see that that could very have easily been me.
Well, I think people, it's like anything else. People reacting to the tragedy and forget, they're, they're capable of, making those same mistakes. I don't know, like what the girl's intentions were. Like, if she, I doubt she was like, I'm jumping in a car and I'm going to do this. I don't know. Maybe she did. I don't know. I mean,
Well, they were just clubbing and getting
yeah.
drunk and, I think on their way home. So I think she was just drunk driving, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's a difficult situation. It's people, from every direction are having opinions, and there's very little known about that stuff. But it's like, the unfortunate thing is people are capable of making mistakes, and people do, and everybody seems to kind of fall into that category.
But anywho, back to the original thing. I just was again trying to muddle through it, again, thinking that humility is a big part of accepting this gospel, right? Because don't you have to think that you aren't really a good person, and good in the sense of like God's standard. But that's like the first step, right?
Like coming to the realization, like, I'm a sinner, I've committed sin, kind of thing. Like, I'm not perfect. That realization.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I seems like I mean, I've never seen anybody do the opposite. And again, I know you don't want to necessarily get into this girl's situation, but I've never seen anybody like kind of do the opposite and go, I'm actually a pretty good person. I've seen people plenty of times argue, against being a Christian because they're good people, but not somebody that's like said, I'm a Christian and hey, by the way, I'm a pretty good person. I haven't seen that happen, but I don't know. That's interesting. That's again, I interesting conversation. I don't know.
Yeah, it is an interesting conversation. And anyway, so I think, yeah, I guess what I was
Jeff,
thinking was with
thoughts?
that whole message of this, you need to repent, right? That's one of the first key things. Although I've also thought, well, again, I might not have felt bad about all my actions, right? It might have actually taken a few years to actually feel really bad. Right, Jeff? Wasn't that part of,
Jeff,
like I felt bad
yeah.
about some
How
things, but
about you,
oh
Jeffrey?
yeah, how about you, Jeff?
Me. So is you asking me a general question, the original or where you guys are at right now?
Well, I think the original was that does that seem foundational? Like that part of the Christian message, the first part is like you are a loser in this game of morality. Like you're a loser.
Correct. So I would say that apart from the many, many details to discuss about Christianity and so forth, assuming somebody accepts that God exists and the Bible's a revelation of God doing stuff here on earth and on, once somebody's trying to figure out what the actual message is, I think the message from Jesus um, begins with you accepting that where you're at currently is not a good place, that you're in need of a savior. That's why we call him a savior. He's saving us. And what is he saving us from? Our bad selves uh, and the judgment due to us. So, if someone doesn't see themselves as bad, then I think they might be breaking the fundamental nature of the game, a fundamental piece of the nature of the game, and that is that we're bad and we're in trouble, and Jesus saves us from that trouble. I mean, it actually explicitly states it in the Bible in First John, where it talks about um, if anyone says he is without sin, um, I can read it. But before I do, I have another verse up here. It says, "For we ourselves were also once foolish, disobedient, deceived, serving various lusts and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful and hating one another." And the other verse I have there is that, do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revelers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God. As such were some of you. So there's that. As such were some of you. So some of them were those things. In the other verse, it says, uh, we also once were. So clearly, the teaching in these two passages that these are things that people once were, but then you were washed, you were sanctified. Washed from what? How can you be washed if you're not dirty? So again, uh, it seems pretty fundamental to the message that if you're going to have a savior, what are you saved from? If you're going to be washed, what are you washed from? I think that that's right. But what the kindness and the love of God our Savior toward man appeared not by works of righteousness. It's not because we were so good, Dana, not by works of righteousness, which we have done, but according to his mercy. Why is he having mercy? Again, because we're admitting, that we need mercy. There's a problem We are that problem. He saved us. Saved us from what? From the crappy person we were. Through the washing. There you go. Washing. What do you mean washing? Regeneration. Why do we need to be regenerated? What's so bad about what we were before? Well, again, there you go. Renewing. Why do we need to be made new? Because what was old was crappy. So I think it's not just a feeling or whatever. It's like foundational to the entire message.
Yeah, I wish I had the paper to look at, but I remember being at some, church intro meeting thing, and it went through the page that we were supposed to go through, the plan of salvation, right? Or the gospel page. Like, I remember thinking like, oh, wow, I think they're missing some things here, because I think it was more to do like with God wanting to be close to you, like, or a relationship is broken, which, sure, I mean, that's one way to describe it. But without all those foundational ideas, I could see it very easily being misconstrued just to, to, um, to mean something else, to that someone could walk away from that presentation if that was all they knew, um, in thinking more like, oh, this is a new chapter. This just helps me be closer to God, and not having that sense of um, judgment, right? Judgment and humility and um, repentance and all that. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what is taught in a lot of these
Buildings,
buildings.
meeting
I mean, I guess
houses.
I suspect, I mean, I've heard some messages that are different, right? Where people are led into a sinner's prayer with a presentation that has very little to do with that repentance, regeneration, renewal message that was expressed in those verses you just read. So, yeah.
Well, so what? Let me ask. You had something about this kind of got you thinking, stirring the pot a little bit, stirring your mind. So, I mean, what about this particular situation that you've been dealing with got you, like,
Oh,
what's your what have you been thinking about in terms of like your perspective now,
well,
and dealing with her and her thoughts and all this stuff? I mean, what's going on? What made you bring it up? What?
Well, one thing I think I try to, even if I'm going down a certain train of thought or pretty convinced, about something, I think I often try to check myself or check out alternate explanations. So one thing I thought, well, okay, because my first main thought is, oh, that's a red flag, like if you're defending the goodness of yourself, right? And then there was context to this situation where all of these things came out, but my just thought is, oh, that's that's a that's a red flag. And I actually thought maybe because I mean I've shared a lot with, I mean, openly with this person, but I thought maybe I should really clarify like what I mean by the gospel might be actually really different from what and they're part of a church and stuff, but what their church is promoting or supporting. Maybe I should just make it clear, because I might be coming at things different than them. Um, but again, going back to me thinking, oh, that's a red flag, because to me this is kind of basic Christian stuff, basic, being very settled with, oh yes, I am a sinner, right? I'm a sinner. I don't get to go around making sure other people know I'm a good person, right? That to me seemed very foundational. But then I also thought, I was trying to think, well, maybe I'm expecting too much too soon, like if they've made a recent profession of faith, maybe I'm expecting them to really have um, deeply settled, some of these things that might have taken me longer than what I'm recalling, right? Because again, I've been
Yeah, of course.
20 years. So I was trying to kind of think back, okay, like what kind of things were coming out of my mouth as a new Christian, right? Like what did I say? Or maybe I had some of these, or some, maybe not the same ideas, but similar ideas that now I would look back and say, oh no, that was wrong. Like that, again, maybe I'm just kind of, I've tried to check myself, think, well, maybe I'm expecting too much theological precision to be coming out of their mouth right now at this time.
Well,
Just checking
that's
myself, I
yeah, no,
guess.
that's probably a little bit true. I mean, do you think? I mean, do you think? I mean, putting it in that perspective, I mean, would she fall into the new believer category? I mean, I don't even know what I don't know how that period extends, but there is that category, right? Yeah, new
Yeah, no,
believers.
no. So they're still in that category. So that's why. So I've tried to kind of check myself, and then also, I don't know if you know this, Ron, but but Jeff and I might be probably considered heretics by people who care about theology.
Oh,
Um,
oh
Yeah.
no, really? Like,
Dana, Ron's not going to talk to us anymore.
so
real,
yeah, yeah.
like
So
you mean
so
like all those like the past 20 years, the attacks? Um, no, I
yeah.
wasn't really aware of that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, so we're kind of in this place now where we don't really. I don't think there's not a lot of established churches for us to go to. Like I really like this one in LA, but it is in at Los Angeles, so I want to go and visit. Um, but we do like. I mean, it does make more sense to fellowship with or be part of some type of church in a region that's close to where you live and where you're likely to see people outside of the meeting. Um, so but yeah, like I don't. So we're kind. I think though, like I said, for people who maybe care about like Reformed theology or basic evangelical theology, what I believe and Jeff believes about even just the gospel is it would be considered heretical, and then some people probably just wouldn't care, right? I think they would just say we're legalistic, and but but all that saying, we might just try to continue to make our own church, I guess. Maybe not call it a church, but I mean, we do like a Bible study, and other people besides people we've given birth to actually show up, you know, Ron? It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, I
like,
remember back in the old days, little Bible studies and people showing up, and yeah, absolutely, it's a good time. It's a great time for discussion, and we even did. Remember, we even did PowerPoints at some point. That was a big deal. Laying out the eschatology stuff on a PowerPoint slide. That was good stuff. It's fun. It's a discussion. You're exploring things. You're talking about things. You're working through things. I mean, that's you know,
Hello?
I yeah. Hello.
No, I think I lost Ron. Not DJ Ron. The show can't go on without DJ Ron. Ron,
I'm here.
are you there? Well, I'll take this as a time. Oh, you're here. You cut
Yeah,
off.
I did.
I don't know.
Oh,
So we are continuing with the Saturday stuff. We did that thing that you came to for a long time until I stopped doing that, and then recently we started reading with our children, and then as we were reading with our children, we invited some people over for that, and then here and there, more than one other family has been coming with anything from one to a max of three different people here. I think our first guest was some Latter-day Saints. But it's been interesting, and most importantly, though, with respect to what Dana is saying, with the concept of heretics and not really being able to go to a church, is that as time has gone on, the what salvation means, the first step that is of this thing called Christianity has changed for me to the point where I go to churches and I feel like they aren't doing the first step right. And if they're not doing the first step right, I think it's difficult to continue to go there without feeling a little bit off. We have continued to go. The first time we didn't go to a church and did church at our house in our entire life intentionally, apart from times we're on vacation or someone's sick or like something came up, but an actual intentional choice was 2 Sundays ago. Dana, does that sound right?
I think she dropped.
You don't know how to get back on? Yeah, you got to turn it back on. Anyhow, a couple Sundays ago, the uh, we actually didn't go to church for the first time, as in we didn't go to a building. And then we just did something at our house. And I don't know the answer. I don't think it's church unless you're gathering with people. So I feel like you need to have people that are like-minded and that you're gathering with. Otherwise, you're just kind of reading the Bible with yourself. But if you have a group of people, like-minded people, and you are meeting together, it appears that's what we all know church is.
Well, do you have to
And
be? Do you have to agree upon 100% of everything to in order to gather? Can you be in a place where you don't necessarily know all the answers, but you're seeking out truth and you're asking questions and you're working through things. I mean, is that in the realm of possibilities?
so we talked about this very thing, me and Dana, because what are the essentials and what are the non-essentials? Can someone believe they're a piece of toast and that the entire universe revolves around their left eyeball? Is that okay? And that there is no such thing as the Bible, and so where are these lines at? What are the essentials? Is a question that me and Dana did discuss, and I don't know her thoughts on it, but I think I've come down to this, what I just said a second ago, the gospel message, the way that Jesus decides whether you're going to heaven or not. So, do you remember the passage where in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, but he'll say, I never knew you, that whole idea?
Yeah.
So, how do we know that we know God, Ron? And before you answer, 'cause I feel like we've had this conversation, I don't know. But the point is that knowing God and how we know God, I think might be my non-negotiable. And it would just look like this. Perhaps agreement around how we know that we know God and how we know that He knows us would be the sort of essential. And then everything else would be the details, like preterism, for example. To me, I don't see preterism as a important thing, or open theism, another strange belief that I have. I don't see that as an important thing. And the age of accountability, or head coverings and baptism and these kinds of things. Um, those when it gets into actions and how you live your life, they can become important things for that reason. But 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 what does it mean to be saved? That seems to be an important thing. So if I were to say, how does one know that they know God? Do you know the answer to that from the Bible?
Well, there's a number of different passages that we could cover. I mean, you know, that get into that, but I think like anything else, it's a discussion. It's not a matter of, I mean, we could make it a matter of, oh, this is what it means, but the reality is, you know, when approaching those topics, there's a discussion involved. We can leave out the discussion. We can just say, well, we're not going to really, you know, not going to really argue through the details. We're just going to come to an agreement, say, this is what it is. I mean, plenty of people do that. Plenty of people don't really engage in the discussion, but you know, the reality is, if I think if you're going to be, you know, if you're going to be reasonable and you're going to, be talking to somebody and you're going to say, hey, let's come to an agreement on what it means to be saved, and what exactly and in what terms is that substantiated? Well, I mean, you know as well as I know that you know most people that you're going to sit down with are going to want to talk about it. Well, I don't say they're going to want to talk about it, but I think there's typically a discussion in order, unless of course you do come to the conclusion, well, I'm saved because you could say I'm saved because of what Jesus did on the cross. Is that a good enough answer? Is that,
No,
no?
no, that's what
So
I'm
okay,
trying to
so
say.
what's that?
No,
Okay,
that's
so
like that's where I would part ways with you. And I'd
okay,
say you're welcome to visit, but I don't know that you're a brother.
okay, well that's fine. I mean, but plenty of people have come to that conclusion, or at least they've rested there and said, well, this is kind of the basics that I believe. And you know maybe you can say, well, that's not what I believe, but and at the end of the day, though, I mean, it might very well be what you believe, but there's some important details in there. I mean, you could say Jesus died on the cross. You believe that, right? He died on the cross for your sins, right?
Yeah, I believe he died on the cross for my sins. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, and if somebody approached you and they said, well, I believe that too, you go, okay. And then, it's like once you start taking the discussion a little bit further, it's when you start engaging in that and just, determining, well, do we believe in the same thing? Are we talking about the same Jesus? Where are we going here?
Yeah, but so how do we know that we know God? Would be my question. And this is the place where we um this is where we part ways. So how do we know that we know God?
Well, tell us how we know that we know God.
All
What are
right.
your
So I
thoughts?
was waiting for
Yeah,
you to
yeah,
say I was
yeah.
waiting for you to say it. All right, I put it up on the screen here. All right, you got it there.
Yes.
It says, by this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He who says, I know him, and does not keep his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, truly the love of God is perfected in him.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think a lot of people would argue with you on that passage and say that that's not true. I think a lot of people would argue with you when you start getting into the details, right? I mean, you start having the discussion, what does it mean to keep his commandments? That's where, the rubber kind of meets the road, I'm assuming, for you, right?
Not just rubber meets the road. If you talk to a typical pastor on the radio, if you listen to them, or if you talk to a typical Christian and you say, do you keep his commandments? What's the response?
Yes.
No, they say, no, I sin every day.
Well, I, yes, they will say that, but I don't think they're going to say, no, I don't ever keep his commandments. They're going to say I struggle every single day. Is
So,
and they're going to say that, and a fair question does that one passage imply that you don't struggle or you don't make mistakes? That's when we
well,
start getting, and again, yes, you can show other scriptures that can support your argument, but that's a fair question. People are going to ask that question. It's a fair question. It's a fair discussion.
I'm back. I'm back.
so
I'm
Ron,
back.
here's another
Let's see.
passage that's difficult. What do you think of this passage? It says, "Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. And you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Whoever abides in him does not sin. Whoever sins has neither seen him nor known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous. He who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whoever has been born of God does not sin, for his seed remains in him, and he cannot sin, because he has been born of God."
Right. Right. So does it end there? Is that it? You accept it at face value. You don't have any questions beyond that. What are
Well,
you? Go ahead.
what am I
I'm sorry.
what?
Well, what are you? What are you?
This is a
You're
message
not.
I don't hear in church.
Well, I think Jeff has a lot of baggage because because he's had a lot of conversations where if the idea is put forth that Christians are not supposed to do certain things or are supposed to do certain things, that it's received very badly. A lot of people get very upset that you would say that there's any responsibility beyond believing. I've heard it explicitly said that, believing in him is the thing that he commanded, and that's it. Like, um, so maybe when Jeff has presented things related to this idea, there's often a lot of not happy people.
Well, but when people say, if you believe in him and that's really all that you need, they will present you passages. If you stop at that passage, somebody could easily make that argument. And if you're not examining the other passages available to you, you're not considering the context, you're not considering, what the author is trying to communicate. There's a number of different considerations there. People, as you know, can make those arguments, and they do. I mean, it's essentially what happens with, somebody says, well, you should believe in Jesus, and you're saved. Well, it's not like you can't present passages that make that argument.
Yeah. So, I mean, what the reason I originally,
Well, hold on, whoa. You're dismissing as though that's not true.
no, I'm not dismissing.
I am.
I was trying to loop it back to the whole reason I came back to, or I touched on the idea that we're probably considered heretics. And what are we going to do with church? And maybe our only solution is to just give up trying to find somewhere local and just start our own church. which would just be like, I don't know if you have to call it that, but just be content with fellowshipping, right? With people who have the same basic ideas instead of trying to fit in like a square peg in a round hole in other places. Um, or so with this situation with my friend, she's my friend, um, where I know my perspective, it seems like it's very different in some points than what the pastor's perspective would be. And I was actually trying to process, well, because I'm thinking in this mode of, well, we might just kind of begin a church or be happy to have our little home church. I think home churches can be great. Definitely saves money on those building fees, and janitorial fees and all that. Um, don't have to build a new building to meet.
Well, it makes it a little more intimate too. I mean, that's it's
Yes,
like a
but I actually was thinking, well, if we continue on in this path, which seems like a viable only alternative for us right now, like we might be in the position of, um, I mean, kind of being a leader or, and with this situation, I thought, like, I was thinking, I don't know if I would have baptized you, or her. Like, I don't, because again, I was thinking, isn't a basic understanding that you are not a good person and that's why you are repenting, and begging God for mercy, like that. And then if you go through that process, which that's what's supposed to be an understanding right before you get baptized, right? And that you're dying to yourself and all that. Like I was actually thinking, like if I were the one, because I wasn't in charge of their baptism, like that was their church's, thing. But I thought, gosh, I would be pretty sober minded before I baptized anybody. Like I think we only baptized one person, right, Jeff? But right, Jeff? Oh, you
Um,
baptized me. That was weird. But I think Matt,
I baptized a few people.
yeah, well, but only one where it was like you were the only one doing it. Like you weren't doing it with the pastor, right? So I was actually thinking if we continue on and with the goal of like, I would love it if people responded to the message of Christ. But I was thinking, I would probably be really circumspect, like to sit down with somebody and really thoroughly go through some of these things that I think are key and then that would result in in a person not um, adamantly stating certain things like the I'm a good person thing. I just thought, oh, that seems like a pretty fundamental. So I'm kind of processing like, if I was the one actually, you know in charge, right, of baptizing somebody, that to me seems like one of the key things I would make sure was understood, right? Like, what are you really doing? And also, what are you promising to do? Like when you do say you're going to follow Christ, like you're really promising something. It's like a marriage vow. Like you're saying, I'm going to obey, right? To the best of my ability. I'm going to obey his commandments. And from what I've seen with what people do with this thing called religion is they come to churches for all sorts of reasons. And it's not always the, oh, I know I'm a sinner and I need a savior and I'm going to obey Jesus. There's all sorts of reasons that I see that people join up.
and that is largely because the environment that fosters that kind of thing. I mean, if you have teachings that lean towards that message, then and you're saying, hey, I've heard a lot, hear it a lot. It's like you're a sinner and nobody's perfect, but you have a home here. I see banners and signs around town, different churches, or you get flyers in the mail. and there's kind of an open invitation to join the church, and regardless of the fact that you're not perfect, right? I mean, you're welcome here to fellowship and make friends. I think a lot of people obviously approach that. Now, with that said, I mean, if you were starting your home church that you're talking about, and people are coming in, to your fellowship, and people are gathering with you, I think your message would probably be a lot different than that. I'm assuming that your message would be more geared towards, like, we take this pretty serious, like this issue of obedience and following Christ, and therefore, if you're going to fellowship with us, you're going to hang around with us, we kind of expect those things from you.
Yeah, I think so. I think I would just take it real serious, especially if you're. I think when you baptize somebody, you're kind of saying like, I readily agree or acknowledge that you are, you know, whatever, entering into the kingdom of God, or you're dying to yourself and being raised up in Christ. It seems like you should really know the person that you're doing that to. Like, um, and then also, I just think if you don't present it like that, then it is kind of like bait and switch, right? Um, I think someone should know what they're pledging or saying, promising, because maybe it's not really what they want.
Yeah,
Um,
no, and that's fair. That's true. I mean, I don't think having the discussion with somebody and saying, "Hey, like, I take this pretty serious, and this is what I think it means," because I have, even in, I would say, like, loose kind of evangelical situations, I've heard, plenty of pastors and teachers stress the importance of communion and baptism, and saying, like, "Hey, we take this pretty serious." Like, I remember one of the teachers I sat under for many years, always said that. Whenever it came to communion or baptism, he very much stressed the importance of obedience and following God's commandments. That was a huge thing for him. Now, with that said, I mean, he happens to pastor, still does, did at the time, a very large evangelical church, non-denominational evangelical church, and at the other side of that message and that importance that he would stress, he would also, there was this open kind of invitation to, "Hey, you're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, and you make mistakes, and yet, here you are, and here's God's gift to you, and gave his son, and he died on the cross, and it's that was the message. That is the message for many churches in your community, my community, all over the place.
Now, you said something about how you've seen banners that say you're not perfect, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Do you think that that's less offensive than a banner that would say you are not a good person, but you're welcome here?
Um, I It depends on who you are. I've seen both. I mean, I've seen
You're not a good person, but you're
not
welcome
not
here.
not
I don't
not
think I've ever seen that one.
not in those terms, not in those
Yeah,
exact.
so that's why I think there's something that's more friendly, or like people aren't as likely to take offense as this statement saying, you're not perfect, I'm not perfect. But I think if there was a sign that said, you're not a good person, but we're still glad you're here, then I'd imagine that might rile up that I guess the pride that comes out, again when it's like yes, I am a good person, right? I feel
Sure,
like
I
that
mean,
you're not a good person would be a an offensive sign to some people.
yeah,
Whereas
a
you're
lot of
not
people,
perfect, it's like, okay, yeah, like I can acknowledge that.
yeah, a lot of people would take offense to that. A lot of people would, if you got the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with them, they would probably, argue differently depending on how you're approaching it. I've mentioned it before, but the studying with the J Dubs, Jehovah Witnesses, they stress those same things. I mean, I think they align with what you're saying, Jeff, more than most evangelical churches, in the community. I mean, you listen. I paid very close attention to a lot of things they said, not everything, but I don't remember all of it, obviously. But one of them was, the importance of obedience, and their message was a lot like what I'm picking up from what Jeff's saying. And again, that's not the first time. I remember there's a guy, he's a quirky dude, and all kinds of crazy stuff, but he used to run a bookstore down in I'd say San Dimas, Glendora, and anyway, it was, a little bookstore, a little hole in the wall kind of thing, but, going and talk to him, he kind of was geared that way too. He kind of stressed the importance of obedience and, talk about, all the things that people just accept as okay and practice. And he's very much against it. And so I don't, as much as I want to say the evangelical community is not just the evangelicals, but the church, I'll just say the church community as a whole seems to be somewhat, accepting of people regardless of their backgrounds and history, and sometimes even their current behavior. They're accepting of it, and their message is kind of like, "Hey, you're not perfect, but you got a place to fellowship here." But there's the other hand. There's the others.
I think we lost you, Ron.
No, no, I paused for a minute. Sorry, but um, I I don't again I don't think it's completely unheard of, because I think I've talked to a lot of people that do kind of gear that way, and stress the importance of that. So I don't know. I don't think that is something that shouldn't be considered as well. That's another important part of the conversation. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you are getting baptized, it's probably a good idea to consider what you're doing. Is it just like, is this just what we do to join the club? Is this like some kind of, you know, initiation, like into our gathering, our gang, or what? You know what I mean? Like, just everybody. That's just what you do. You get baptized. There's no conversation behind it, no questions. I mean, I don't know. I've seen, like I said, I've seen people and heard people, and plenty of people stress the importance of kind of knowing what you're doing, and giving attention to that. So even in the kind of larger churches that don't necessarily stress you have to be this like perfect person that never sins. Yes, no, is that like foreign to you guys? You
I
don't
don't know of a single church um, within the typical evangelical churches who teach the doctrine that one uh, one that teach these passages directly without explaining why it's okay if someone's not practicing lawlessness. Um, so I understand if I were to try to figure out what's going on here between us, it would be that I understand there's a message of more seriousness at some churches and less seriousness at others. I'm not talking about seriousness. I'm talking about what a Christian is.
Well, yeah, I no, I know, I completely understand what you're saying, but my point is though, like if you're observing what's going on within the church community, you do see both sides of this thing. You do see a pretty large, percentage or large community in the Christian church, regardless of even denomination that, say, hey, like you're not a perfect person, but you can definitely join our church. You can be a part of what we're doing.
Um, I can't think of a single church that would support the following message. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. So only those who are doing the will of God are going to enter heaven. Not those who say, Lord, Lord. Because remember, saying Lord, Lord is essentially saying, I accept Jesus, and saying all the right words. I'm a believer, saying Lord, Lord, right? This Jesus says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. So it's what you do that shows whether you're a Christian or not.
Yeah, and I would say I mean I don't know necessarily that we spent the same amount of time, in the churches I'm referring to, but I know you have visited those churches, and I would say, the pastor that I'm referring to that, took obedience pretty seriously, that was like a pretty common message for him. He wasn't like kicking people out of the church, but he was, I think, and the last time I heard a message, it was like to his leadership. I mean, he still teaches that pretty heavy. I mean, that's a pretty common message for him to stress obedience.
Yeah, you know
Regardless of
what?
how big his church is, I still
Yeah.
hear him talking
Is
about
that
that a
Calvary,
lot.
Calvary Chapel Saving Grace?
No, no,
What
no.
church is that?
Golden Springs, Rawl.
Golden Springs? Are you kidding
Mhm.
me?
Yeah,
Raul
yeah,
Reese?
yeah. He preaches a pretty heavy obedience message. Always has.
You know what? Honestly, though, we've probably dropped out of listening to the Calvaries. I mean, it's probably been a long time, Jeff. Don't you
Well,
think?
I'd say if you
Because I
listen
think
to if
we've
you
been
listen
in
to his
less
teaching,
Calvary type place. I mean, we were at a Presbyterian place for a while, and then we've been visiting. But I mean, we really haven't visited the Calvaries. I mean, maybe Rawl is different. I haven't listened to him in so long, but I did grow weary of listening to some of the other pastors on K Wave to where I just thought, like, why am I listening to this anymore? Um, because some of them, I think they don't have that type of message, and
well,
I
I
just
would.
found I wasn't. So maybe we might have just been kind of out of that loop. Wouldn't you say, Jeff? Did you
Do you think
yourself?
I believe that Raul Reese teaches this? I don't believe that he does, but if you wanted to show me, I'd be interested. I'm not gonna say I know. If you're gonna say he teaches that, then you just gotta show me, I guess, or I'd have to look into it myself.
Yeah, I don't mind trying to point out something. I have to listen to his messages, but I think if you were just to consistently, even for a week, consistently listen to his teaching, I think you would pick up on his message of obedience. And that was one of the things about him that people always talked about. They always talked about Rawl and his kind of he doesn't hold punches, and his messages are very convicting, and because he he teaches that. I mean, he brings up those passages. And again, I sat under his teaching for many years, and I know for a fact he does, and at least he used to. I mean, admittedly, it's been many years now, but I did hear something not too long ago, um, in his teaching, and it's kind of geared towards that same thing. It was his leadership. He was talking to his leadership, but he was stressing a message of obedience, and from my recollection, he kind of always has. It's been a pretty consistent theme for him.
Maybe they stopped playing him on the radio. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've even.
Well, there was a split at the Calvaries. I don't know which side of it he was on.
Yeah, I haven't even. I don't really tune in regularly anymore. So, so I've been out of the loop. Out of the loop. I think, though, I did know of a family who stopped going to his church because he talked about hell too much.
Yeah, there's those stories as well. Lots of those. I heard that going there a lot. How many people would just not want to go, because he would talk about that a lot. His big thing. Well, not his big thing, but common
He's still
experience
on
there.
K-Wave.
Yeah, he
Mm.
is. Pretty common, common thing at the church. At least he used to. I don't know if he still does, but would do an altar call, and not just like an altar call for like people that want to come into the faith, but a lot of times it was for people that were already believers, and it was called to kind of repent and be obedient to God's commandments. And
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about, though. Every pastor I know, and this is where you and I again are going to part possibly, teaches you should be
well, hold on,
obedient to
hold whoa,
God.
whoa, 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 hold on. I'm just telling you what I've observed. We're not parting anywhere at this point. I'm
No,
just
what I'm
telling you.
trying to clarify, I'm trying to say that every pastor I know says we should be obedient. Um, the question is whether we will go to heaven or hell based on whether we do the will of the Father in heaven. I know of no pastor that teaches that we'll go to hell if we don't do the will of our Father in heaven, apart from
Well,
Jesus.
I think you might want to check out his teaching.
You guys might need to actually take a sermon and maybe revive where is that in the Bible. I know you had a lot of listeners for that one, that old
Yeah,
podcast.
I do think an issue here is that speaking specifically of Raul Reese is not something I know about. So I'm not. I'm just trying to say I don't know about Raul Reese. It certainly is still true that in my experience, um, what I said is within the bounds of my experience. It's true that I don't hear this message. While I can't remember a single message, I can almost guarantee you that in my many hours of listening to K-Wave, that I would listen to Raul Reese, and I would be surprised if he is not in this exact same camp. However, again, it's not about Raul Reese. It's the message that I'm trying to say, which I believe is an essential message that is missing, and that is that the Christian um, is is a sinner, then gets forgiven for that sin, and then they ought to walk in the Spirit, not fulfill the lust of the flesh. And if they're not doing that, then it's hard to imagine they're a Christian at all.
Well, I would say, just again, just from experience, and I mean, I don't mind going through some of his teachings, but I would say that was pretty consistent theme in his teaching. Um,
maybe I'll do my homework, maybe I won't, but I think that again, talking about raw Reese isn't going to go anywhere in this conversation because I don't know, and so, but the doctrine itself, I find that people uh, get very very upset about this idea.
Well,
Most people believe that the idea is by grace you are saved through faith. It is not of yourself; it's a gift of God. So they quote that passage, and then they have this idea that that means that from the moment you accept Christ, you're now forgiven, and that's period. That's the way. That's the message of Jesus. Whereas the complete message of Jesus is we say, "Lord, Lord," and then we do the works, and those. That's how it says the sheep and the goat, or not the sheep and the goats. I'm sorry. Well, the sheep and the goats too are separated by their works, but in the Lord, Lord passage, it divides between those who knew God and those who didn't, based on what they did, not based on what they said. So they both said Lord, but it was what they did that mattered. And those passages in John, this is not a message that I hear. And when I do point it out to leaders, they generally recoil from it, and it gets to the point of being it's like a heresy that one actually has to live as a Christian to be a Christian.
yeah, yeah, and and I think I would agree with you, and on based on your observation, you probably don't hear that message taught a lot. Probably the majority of teachers you hear, and when you do, you know, if you were to confront somebody and say, "Hey, this is kind of what I think the passages are teaching," yeah, I think you would come against, you'd have some resistance to that, and it become contentious. I don't think your I don't think your experience, I don't think what you're saying is invalid. I'm just, I'm saying there, from my experience, there are a couple out there that do teach it, but I agree with you. I mean, yeah, you're gonna you're gonna come across plenty of that, of course. It's
Yeah,
like
and
a
I think that was one of the reasons I did back off of listening to the K Waves because I don't know all their names, but it seemed like a lot of the pastors would just kind of do a lot of gymnastics where there were some basic passages and then they would immediately try to make it seem like it wasn't something that you really had to do or your salvation was in jeopardy. And I just, that was an impression I had that, oh gosh, they keep trying to twist it into this narrative, a narrative, like make it fit even when it plainly doesn't fit. Um, and so, but yeah, so I mean, it's been a long time, but maybe I think Raw too was talking about the end times a lot too. So not that I don't find listening to those things relevant or interesting, but they're really not that. That's probably not the first thing I want to listen to. Is
yeah.
different people's interpretations of how Revelation is going to be fulfilled.
I think if you took some time to go, hear, not necessarily even go there, but just on the radio, or go
Internet.
online, internet, yeah, go online to his the church's website, listen to some of the teachings. I think, and I'm gonna assume you could probably even dial it down by topics, or go. He does in depth teaching verse by verse. You could go to those passages and kind of listen to what he teaches, and you know I don't know, tell me what you think. I From what I remember, again from what I remember, that kind of was heavy on obedience. It was a pretty strong teaching from him.
Now,
People would get very upset about it, by the way. People didn't like that a lot. People were very uncomfortable.
now
Remember,
the big
many times after, after a sermon, would be talking, and people in the parking lot were like, "Man, I'm just convicted." You know, did a lot of that stuff.
Now the big question though is if you are ever in town, would you want to visit Jeff Geibel's Bible basher, thrasher study?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's like I said, I think if anybody's joining your home fellowship or your gathering, like you guys are going to be pretty serious about your message, and you're going to say, well, we believe in baptism, but we believe it means a certain thing, and obedience and commandments that all means a certain thing. But I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be, but you might say, okay, we don't really see it that way, but from what I know of you, I mean, you're gonna at least have the dialogue. You're gonna at least have the discussion with people. You're not gonna completely shut them down and say, I'm not gonna try to reason through this with you.
Now, it's getting late, and I have something very important to share with all of you. There's a protest on Thursday that I think we all need to make sure we show up for.
Oh,
Did you hear about it?
no, I don't
You
think
can
maybe
go to
I
the
did.
website Trump is not above the law.org. Trump, let me type it up here. Trump is not above the law.
Let's check this out. Let's see what we got here.
Let's see. Trump. Oh, there's just too much here. There's too much here. Darn it. Let me make it one word. Too many articles. Too many people
Oh, I
have.
see. Hey, first things that I love this. And now,
Oh,
hey,
hold on.
by the wait, you're gonna love this. To
Oh, what?
say to say that these search engines aren't skewed. So I put Trump is, and the very first things that come up, Trump is an idiot. Trump
Here,
is a
let me try
moron.
that.
Trump is a traitor.
Trump
Trump
is.
the Antichrist. And then it goes, Trump is
Hey,
Israel. Trump
you know
is
what's funny is look at mine. Mine are different than yours. Trump is not above the law. Trump is not above the law protest. Trump is Republican. Trump is not above the law Mueller report. Trump is German and Trump is president. Maybe those are more a reflection of you, Ron, than they are of
Search
the
something
internet.
else. Put something else in. Put something else
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Okay, Clinton is. Clinton, what do you get for Clinton is?
I get Clinton. Hold on, let me capitalize it because it's coming like Clinton is Michigan. Clinton is. Hold on.
Now you had more, Jeff.
Clinton. It's weird. Clinton is Clinton Island scandal. Clinton
Clinton's.
IS.
What do you get for
Clinton.
Clinton? So I get
Clinton
Clinton
is.
impeached, Clinton versus Trump poll, Clinton Kelly, Clinton Foundation, Clinton Middle School, Clinton News, Clinton Road, Clinton. So we get different suggestions, huh? That's amazing. I think that's amazing. Don't you think
That
it's
is
amazing?
amazing. Are you on Google?
Yeah.
Let me hold on.
Were you on DuckDuckGo or something?
Yeah, it was actually.
That's why you get different suggestions.
Well,
All right. So
hold
I
on,
just
hold
typed
on.
it in. Trump is not above the law.org, and we get this rapid response events. Breaking 4-1. We are calling for a national day of action on Thursday, April 4th, to demand that the Attorney General William Barr release the report. If he fails to meet the deadline set by congressional leaders of Tuesday, April 2nd, Barr has offered an alternate timeline for a redacted version of the report. But we deserve the full report, and congressional leaders and the American people expect it now. Find an event near you and RSVP to join the local action. Okay. So you're going to show up?
Yeah, sure. Let's
Okay. Well,
see
on
what's
this
going
map,
on.
I think that you're somewhere here on here. You're probably an event organizer, I bet. Now they have over here something very interesting. I just wanted to share this. While you guys were talking, I was doing a little bit of research. So it says the plan right here. It says the plan. Red lines. Here are the actions Donald Trump could take that would set these protests in motion. So they've been planning this protest for a while, and they have these red lines. The red lines in graphic form here. So they have let's take a look at this graphic form. Let's see. Trump, Russia, red lines. We will protest if Donald Trump fires special counsel Robert Mueller, pardons key witnesses, prevents the investigation from being conducted freely by firing Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, or repealing the regulations establishing the office, or if Mueller's findings show significant wrongdoing by Donald Trump or are hidden from the public.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's. I guess the.
What do you think about these red lines? Pretty crazy, huh?
Well, yeah. No. I mean, it's like. I think the red line. I. I'm fascinated by the lack of just people laying out evidence and saying this is what it is. Like it's a continual, ongoing, like we need to know what's going on and it's being hidden. And it's like, okay, all these people are against him, and yet nobody's laying out any kind of evidence. I mean, this thing's a joke at this point. But nevertheless, I mean,
Now,
yeah, okay, cool.
I wanted to share something with you because I looked at this and I thought, that's pretty interesting that they have had these red lines. And my first thought was it's interesting because they just crossed a red line, so now they're going to protest, right? But I thought it was a bit of a stretch. They're not really hiding anything. They're just like going to release it a little bit later than the people want, right? So that's not exactly hiding. So they're really stretching that last red line there, are hidden from the public. But that's not. Notice it says are hidden from the public. That's a little bit different than what it says on the other page, which says the Mueller investigation releases findings showing significant wrongdoing by Donald Trump, or Congress or the administration blocks the public from seeing Mueller's finding. So did Congress or the administration block the public from seeing the Mueller findings, Ron?
Supposedly, but I
No,
mean,
temporarily, right? While
yeah,
they while they take some information out of it. So
yeah.
should they really be protesting? I mean, it doesn't seem like any of their red lines have really been crossed.
Well, I don't. I mean, on the Republican side, I mean, I don't understand. Number one, there's plenty of Republicans that are against him. It just seems like this ongoing kind of mystery. I mean, lay it out. I mean, what's what's the deal here? I mean, and
Well,
this
well,
guy.
well, hold on here. Look at their red lines. These things could have been a problem, right? Fires Robert Mueller, but he didn't do that. Pardons key witnesses, but he didn't do that. Prevents the investigation from being conducted freely, but he didn't do that. Fires Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, didn't do that. Repealing the regulations establishing the office, didn't do that. Or if Mueller's findings show significant wrongdoing, that didn't happen. Or hidden from the public. Well, they're not hidden from the public either. They're going to be released.
Yeah,
Unfortunately for them, they had this big thing that they were going to be ready to protest, and none of the. It's kind of funny. I'm enjoying that they thought all of these things might happen,
yeah,
and
no,
that
me
and that, and
too.
that they didn't. But you know what I else thought was funny? I thought I'd use the Wayback Machine and do some research and see if these red lines have changed. You think they've changed over time?
I'm sure they have.
All right, so I use the Wayback Machine. You know what that is?
No.
You can go way back to see what the website looked like over time. So I'm going to put the first one up here. This is December 2017. Nobody is above the law. Mueller firing rapid response. Donald Trump is publicly considering firing special counsel Robert Mueller, the person leading the Department of Justice investigation of possible illegal actions by Donald Trump and members of his presidential campaign and the efforts to conceal those activities. This would be a constitutional crisis for our country. It would demand an immediate and unequivocal response to show that we will not tolerate abuse of power from Donald Trump. Our response in the minutes and hours following a power grab will dictate what happens next. And so that's what this came out of. So this originally started as Trump was saying he's going to fire Mueller, and they're saying we're going to protest. You catch my drift, dog? How this started?
Yes, yes, I do. Yes.
So all those other things that we mentioned, where'd those come from? Now, I think it's okay that things evolve. I'm all for evolution and changing, but I do think it's funny how this originally started because they were concerned that he might fire Mueller. But what happened? He didn't fire
Yeah.
Mueller, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right, so now let's go to February. So this is the next month. They added pardons. So they added a new paragraph in there. It's also possible that rather than firing Mueller, Trump will obstruct Mueller's investigation by issuing blanket pardons of key figures being investigated, firing Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, the person overseeing Mueller, or taking other actions to prevent the investigation from being conducted freely. So that was added. Did any of those things ever happen, Ron?
No, no,
No, they
did not.
didn't. So much for that protest. Let's see. Let's go forward in time. April 19th, 2018. Now they have 3, firing Mueller, pardons of key witnesses, 3, actions that would prevent the investigation from being conducted freely, such as replacing Deputy Attorney Mueller's current supervisor, or repealing the regulations established in the office. All right. Did any of those things happen?
Nada.
Yeah. Too bad, because like they were supposed to protest, you know?
Yeah.
All right, let's flash forward to where are we at now? June 2018. This is about 6 months ago, yeah? Oh, they still don't have the extra one on there. But let's go. I'm going to hit the forward button to August 2018. And still not there. I mean, they got a protest, right? I mean, they have this event plan. It's going on a year now. The whole oh, there it is. In October, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, actually, it's a while now, but October 2018, they added an additional one. The Mueller investigation releases findings showing significant wrongdoing by Donald Trump, or Congress or the administration blocks the public from seeing Mueller's findings. Now, I only say all of this to say it's so funny, right? They couldn't protest over the first thing, nor the second thing, or the third thing. But by October, maybe they were getting a little bit thoughtful about this and saying, you know, maybe this is all going to work out just fine. So at least we need to add on to there that if Congress blocks the public from seeing the findings, we'll protest about that too. And of course, that didn't happen. They said they're going to do it in just a little bit, but they got to protest.
Yes, they do.
You can't have all this built up without some sort of protest. I mean, this nothing burger is not working out. You can't protest about nothing.
That's right. That's right.
So we got to protest about something, and what is it? That the date on the release is going to be later than sooner, maybe by a couple weeks.
So what exactly, I mean, is there any mention of like what they think is in the report? I mean, I know like a long time ago we talked about like Russians using memes or something like that to like influence the election.
Well, that's a separate issue.
Yeah, but
that's just Russia influencing the election.
Isn't that the whole collusion? Like, how exactly did he collude?
It would mean that Trump was involved in, you know, maybe he created the Coloring Bernie page, you know, for example. Maybe that was Trump's idea. Like Trump was saying, you know what would be really good if we made a muscle version of Bernie and we said color it. And then the Russians were like, that's good. That's good, Trump.
Oh, you know what?
We're going to get him with that one. Or how about this? Jesus arm wrestling Satan. And they're like, Trump, you are a man with great ideas.
No, I did hear. I'm almost certain. I'm almost certain it's somebody from The View, but they said like one of the things he did was like he came up with the term like crooked Hillary, and that was actually a Russian thing. Um,
Anyway,
and that changed like everything. That changed the election. So that was like a pretty serious offense. Never mind what happened to Bernie Sanders and everything that was
oh yeah,
um, made public, and all the
I know.
findings and all the things that actually did
Everybody focused on the
come
wrong
out.
thing. They focused on what happened, that they got hacked, instead of what they discovered, which was something pretty damning. Anyhow, Dana will be very happy with what I am going to say next, though, and I think that we just should play it right and do the wait and see. We'll just wait and see what's in that report. How about that? Maybe we will find out that Trump actually drew up the Bernie muscle man, but we'll have to just wait and see.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
That would
so
that would that would be interesting though. I mean, picture if he did like picture if it really came out like I don't like where would he have been when he did it? Would he have been on like a plane or
Trump
in a
Tower, of
restaurant?
course.
Yeah, okay, Trump Towers. He's sitting in his like executive suite, right? And he's like, you know what, give me a sketch pad. I'm gonna let's draw let's draw up this picture of Bernie and let's make this thing happen. I just I don't know. I'm a
I
little
think you do know.
yeah,
Anyhow,
it's a
any
little
last
silly,
thoughts
isn't it?
from the precious Dana?
No, another epic wonder.
Oh man.